What's going on, everybody? Zach from Forward Strength, and we have a few more questions that folks want answered. I love doing this because there's so much information out there. Some of it good, most of it, maybe skewed or designed to sell you something, right? This is just for information for folks to be better armed with the truth. So, the first question is, do I really need to lift weights to get stronger? The answer is no, you really don't. That's based on there's a bigger principle at play here, which is overload or progressive overload, you might have heard before. Really, the idea is your body adapts to what you ask it to do, and it will get stronger if you ask it to do more and more work over time. So a good example is, is someone who can do 10 push-ups strong compared to someone who can do 100 push-ups, right? Between those two, most people would say that 100 push-ups is stronger. Now, strength, right? We can talk about exactly what that means and how to measure stronger, but let's just go with a normal sort of like logical definition. 10 push-ups, 100 push-ups. If you can do 100 push-ups in a row, you're stronger than the person than when you could do only 10 in a row, right? So that's a way to get stronger, is just be able to do more stuff. Now, if we apply this, this idea to specifically barbell lifts, like if you do a bench press once and you do 135 pounds, and then you don't bench press for a month and only do push-ups, you might be able to bench press a little bit more, but it's a specific skill, and it's like saying, I'm gonna practice my serve in tennis and just do it once, and then not do it for a month, and then hope that when I come back, my serve is gonna be better, right? That's a technical skill, and while yes, you might improve in some other areas that have crossover to that skill, you're not directly working on that skill, so it's not getting better as efficiently as it could if you were working on that specific skill. But if I think this question is based a little bit more on like, do I need to go to the gym in order to be fit? No, you really don't have to do that either. Another way to think about it is, if you're trying to do more and more work over time, and say you only have, some folks are just limited by time or lifestyle or something like that, and they think they can't go to the gym, so we need to do something. Fitness should not be stuck behind a paywall, right? Fitness is not something that should be isolated only to people who have time and money to pay to go to a gym. So at home, you can do all sorts of things, right? At home, we can also slowly do more and more work. You can do more and more volume, right? Where you do more sets and more reps over time. So say maybe you start with doing, 3 sets of 5 push-ups. And this is just a push-up example, right? We can apply this to anything. But say you start with 3 sets of 5 push-ups, and then, the next week you do 3 sets of 6, and then 3 sets of 7. Or you could go the other way where you do 3 sets of 5, and then 4 sets of 5, and then 5 sets of 5. Right? We can change this up however you like. The idea is you need to be able to do more and more over time. If you are looking for not just strength, but body composition change, maybe you want your muscles to look different, then we can do things like at a tempo where you're doing 3 sets of 5 push-ups one week, and then the next week you're doing 3 sets of 5 with a 3 count on the way down. So you're slowly controlling yourself, right? Your time where your muscles are doing things, we call this time under tension, is increasing. And so you're doing more work over time, right? It's exactly the same thing. The same as if you added more reps, right? It's just about getting your body to gradually increase what you're asking it to do, and it will adapt and it will get better at those things. So do I really need to lift weights to get stronger? Let's get an answer here. Absolutely not. You just have to and your body will adapt. There you go. There's a caveat here that says, you have to recover from the work that you do, and you run out of room on this eventually. You can't just do one more push-up every single day, and then after 2 years, right, you can do 700 push-ups in a row. That's probably not going to happen, right? There is a sort of general cap where you have to start changing things up. I would also say if you're doing push-ups every single day, that many push-ups, especially over time where you get a big volume, your joints might not like that very much because most joints don't love repetitive movement. So if your technique isn't perfect and if you're doing so many and pushing through the pain, on, your joints probably don't like that very much. So we can be smart about this, and we can design a program that makes a lot more sense than just do more all the time. But to generally illustrate the point, if the question is, do I have to lift weights to get stronger? The answer is no, you do not have to lift weights. Let's just add that caveat though, be smart. There you go. The next question is, I work crazy long shifts and I'm just too tired to work out. What else can I do? For this person, I don't know what their goals are, and so it's kind of hard to say, exactly do this to get this result. But generally, I think this is a super common phenomenon that a lot of folks deal with, which is you just feel like you're too tired at the end of the day to do anything. And maybe in the case of crazy long shifts where you literally don't have that much time in your day left over, right? I think folks work 10, 12 hours sometimes, and in some industries you do that 5 days a week, 6 days a week. If you're doing, if you work a crazy long shift one day and then you have a day off, like if it's like a nursing or an EMT schedule or a firefighter or something like that, where you're like 48 on, 24 off, that kind of thing, then we can play with your workout schedule to fit with your work so that you are able to take advantage of your time off. But let's just assume this is a person who maybe works like retail or something like that, where you have long shifts, some kind of service industry, and you're tired and you're burnt out at the end of the day. There are a lot of things you can do, but before we get to those things, I think we need to address the mindset of too tired. And I don't put that in air quotes to be condescending. I put that because that's a very specific sort of phrasing, a specific mindset that I think people bring to fitness, which is being too tired to do something. And I would ask if you're really too tired, or is it just tough to wrap your mind around doing another activity? Because I think those are really different things. If you're literally so exhausted that you can't pick up your foot and place it, and then pick up your foot and place it and walk and get that kind of activity, if you're literally so like your body cannot create enough energy to do some squats and some planks when you're at home by yourself, and you don't have to pay any money or go anywhere and spend time to do it, if that's how exhausted you are, then we have a couple of problems, right? Is the work is something unethical is happening, or you're not eating enough where you're, quite literally starving, right? Or, there's something metabolic going on that I can't help with that you need that a doctor would be more suited to talk to you about. Now, depending on what that metabolic thing is, strength and health and fitness absolutely is sort of something that we'd want to talk about, but also depending on what it is, fitness probably, maybe eventually, but fitness isn't going to help your Crohn's disease, right? It'll help the symptoms, but it's not going to make it go away, that kind of thing. So there are metabolic and gastrointestinal diseases and conditions that absolutely would make you too exhausted to do anything fitness related. But if that's not the case, if you mentally can't handle the idea of doing another activity, that's a very different sort of set of conditions and lifestyle that we get to talk about in a very different way, right? So if you're coming at this from, I'm so tired and burnt out from dealing with people all day that all I can imagine doing is sitting on the couch and watching TV or, video games or, something like that. That's all I can wrap my head around doing. I would ask, why can't you do those things that you do enjoy, that do help re-energize you and get you through the next day? Because I think that's great. Do what you got to do. Mental health is so important and a whole other side of this. Why can't you do those things and do some kind of movement at the same time, right? What if you read your book from in and out of a plank position, right? What if you can hold your wireless controller from the bottom of a squat, and you might not perform as well as you would if you were sitting in a perfect sort of reaction time, you can do what you got to do. Okay, that's okay, right? Because the point isn't to win. The point is to unwind and be able to do what you can the next day and the next, the next, the next. So when we hear the words too tired, and I do want to put it in these air quotes because it's a specific phrase. Again, I don't mean this to be condescending. Too tired could mean one of two things. It could mean literally so exhausted that you cannot move, or it can mean too burnt out mentally to contemplate doing some other activity that is going to expend energy. Those are different things we have to tackle in different ways. So let's dive in here. So 1, 2, exhausted. Come on now. Try incorporating movement into your existing routines. Boom, there you go. Okay. The last question is, I already eat clean and work out regularly, but I'm not losing weight. What's happening? Man, this one's super common. I get this one all the time. And you probably have heard, a lot of the common adages like muscle weighs more than fat, or, you're just getting stronger and the fat's going, your composition is changing. Those things are all true, but they can be kind of hard to visualize and hard to make tangible for you. So I already eat clean and work out regularly, but I'm not losing weight. Losing weight, why is that the only metric that we use? For some reason, numbers on the scale, for some reason, losing weight is just a very oddly central measurement tool, metric that we use for all sorts of health and fitness. Unfortunately, this comes from the idea that some metrics, something to measure is better than nothing. And so we have to measure what we can and then base our activities off of that measurement. So every time you go to the doctor's office, they put you on the scale because it's a consistent thing that they can do to track measurements, right? They put you on the scale, they take your temperature, and they take your blood pressure. And of those three things, we can tell, generally, a lot about what we need to be focusing our attention on. We're not necessarily using those three things to tell everything there is to know about you, but we are using those things to extrapolate other information. Unfortunately, though, of those three things, your temperature, your blood pressure, and the weight on the scale, kind of only one of those things we feel like we can control on our own, right? You can't change your temperature unless you purposefully sweat it out or jump in do an ice plunge, something like that. You can, but it's not really lasting and it doesn't really do anything for you. You can't change your blood pressure just by thinking it. I mean, you can raise your blood pressure probably by thinking about that person in traffic who cut you off today. Yeah, you'll raise your blood pressure. Lowering your blood pressure is a lot harder because it requires you to calm down. But again, that doesn't really do a whole lot for your health and fitness goals. So pounds on the scale, well, we can do that. We can change how we eat. We can change how we lift. But that isn't the only part of the picture. I think let's just assume that this person even knows this. And their question is, why isn't my body changing? Why can't I see any change happening? Why don't I feel like I'm getting closer to my goals, right? I'm doing the work, but I don't feel like I'm getting closer to my goals. That's probably a little more what this question is about. So to that, I would say, okay, but are you actually doing what you need to do to get closer to your goals, right? So for a lot of folks, they work out and they, eat clean, which what does that even mean? But they're not seeing the change that they want. Okay, so let's do a quick analysis of exactly what you're doing. So eat clean is the first thing. I already eat clean. Okay, if you're eating, by eat clean, let's assume you mean not eating a lot of processed foods, because generally that's what people mean of, I'm not eating a bunch of junk food, right? I'm not drinking a bunch of soda. I'm not, getting fast food all the time. Okay, let's say you're if that's what clean is, 100% clean, right? You're only eating whole foods, only eating, not from capital W, capital F Whole Foods, but real foods that aren't processed, right? Let's say you're one of the, hardcore people who, I don't eat anything that has nutrition facts on it, right? Because meat doesn't have nutrition facts, veggies don't have nutrition facts, it's protein and it's veggies, that's what it is. Let's say you're one of those people and that's how clean you're eating. That's awesome. And work out regularly. Okay, so what does that mean? So are you going for walks? Are you weight training? Are you maybe training too much? Are you maybe training too little? Everybody's different and everyone's in a different place with their fitness. So, work out regularly, just doing something every day may not be enough, right? Maybe you're at the point where, and this happens to a lot of people, we call it a plateau, right? Maybe you're at the point where your food intake and your exercise kind of have stabilized because you've gotten you've gotten fitter. And so let's say you started at, eating 3,000 calories a day and then you started eating clean and cut that down to 2,500 calories a day. And you started burning, 1,800 calories a day and you built a bunch of muscle and we raised that to 2,500 calories a day. Okay, so now these things are equal and you wouldn't see any more change because what you're taking in and what you're burning are the same, right? Even though they started in different places. So that's another way, or excuse me, one way that you might not see much change anymore is because you've equalized these things. And again, something has to change. Just like we said at the beginning, it's about progressively asking for more from your body. Now, what we can't do is just cut your food again, right? And just remove your calories right away. That's not necessarily the right thing to do. But we can shuffle things around a little bit and say, okay, what are you doing for your workouts? Well, maybe those workouts need to be bumped up in intensity a little bit. Or maybe they're too intense and you're overtrained and your body's holding on to weight or fat and water to compensate for that overtraining. Maybe we need to pull your intensity down a little bit. Okay, so maybe we've played with that and we started seeing some changes, but then the changes stopped again. Okay, well, let's take a hard look at your nutrition, right? Maybe you're not the person who is actually eating super, super clean all the time. And maybe you tracked for a little while and you thought that you were eating clean. Ooh, but you know what? I am having a Starburst from that person's desk every day. Thought I'd cut that out. And you know what? I guess I do skip breakfast pretty regularly because I'm in a rush to get to get to work on time. Or we've had a bunch of staff meetings and they always bring food, which is great, but it's always bagels, which is not great. So, let's take a hard look at that too. Thinking that we're doing enough but not seeing results usually means that we're not actually doing enough. And sometimes that's hard to confront and say, I need to change. But if we're already here, you're already eating clean and you're already working out regularly, you probably already had that thought process of, I need to change, and then acted on that change. And so you were successful and you were able to do that. So let's say for this one, let's take a look at what you're actually doing. Okay. So yeah, we have to look at what you're actually doing. Are you actually eating clean? Are you eating enough or not enough? Are you actually working out enough or too much? Let's find what needs to change because it's different for everybody. So for this one, again, it's tricky. It's hard to say without knowing you and your goals and what you're currently doing. But generally, this is true for most folks, is if you're not seeing change, something isn't happening enough or something is happening too much. And we need to keep an eye on that. So quantifying and tracking all this stuff is a great way to be able to tell, at the very least, where you're starting so we can start making better decisions and start making little changes that'll get you where you want to go. So that's another beginner Q&A. That's another set of questions that folks submit, and then we try to answer them as best they can. But again, without a lot of background info, these kind of have to be general. But I think that works because obviously the vast majority of people watching this are not the ones who submitted the 3 questions that we answered. So being more general can help. But again, if you have questions, shoot us an email. athlete.forward@gmail.com. Gmail.com. There you go. Shoot us your questions there. You leave them on the Facebook page, facebook.com. I probably should have done this ahead of time. /always forward strength. There you go. Right? Drop on a comment there or a post on the page. Let's answer them for it. Right? Fitness should not be stuck behind a paywall where you have no idea what to do because the only people that know are charging you a ton of money for it, right? If you want more in-depth specific stuff, absolutely. If you want to outsource this part of thinking so that you don't have to do it yourself, right? That makes sense. But if you just want to know more so that you can feel more in control of your health and your fitness, you shouldn't have to pay a ton of money for that. So hit us up. Love to answer your questions. This is a great format for us. Facebook, YouTube, send us an email. Thanks a lot.